Hi, Brandon. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing good. Great film. This is my favorite of your films, easily.
Oh, thank you.
And it might sound weird to some people, but I get like a lot of comfort feeling uneasy when watching films. I like that guttural reaction. Infinity Pool definitely nails it. Are you the same when you watch movies?
I do. I mean, I wouldn't say comfort necessarily, but I definitely like movies that make me uncomfortable or that push me into a kind of a weird headspace. I feel like to me, that's when a film has that kind of transformative quality to it. It forces you to kind of see the world from another angle or explore an aspect of your own brain that you wouldn't normally explore because you're not comfortable with it. But I think that's healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you've tapped in some really genuinely relatable fears that a lot of people have with this film, like being stuck in a foreign country, in trouble with the law, and you haven't got your own sort of embassy to get you out of that trouble. Um, where did this story come from? Like, what inspired you to tell it?
So it actually started as a short story that I was working on and never completed in I think 2014 or 2013. And the initial idea for the story was just essentially the first execution scene in the film. So it was someone in uh, an execution theater watching an exact likeness of themselves being executed, and this double thinks that it committed the crime and that it's guilty. And so it was sort of about the identity side of it and punishment and that kind of thing. And then the tourism resort kind of grew out of that. As I was expanding it into a feature, that seemed like a good environment to tell a story about people who are not operating with conventional consequences.
So you haven't had any of your own unfortunate experiences abroad?
I mean, not. I did draw from one vacation I went to quite a while ago. Nothing like the film really, but just the environment. If you've ever been to one of these sort of horrible all-inclusive resorts where you're on a weird compound surrounded by a razor wire fence and totally removed from the host country or any sense of culture or reality. uh I did draw from something that
Yeah,
I
it's
experienced.
terrifying. How important is shock value to you? Like, do you set out to create something a bit shocking, or does that element sort of come along with naturally with the process?
It comes along naturally, I think. You know I I don't have a problem with shock cinema. I mean, there's obviously a great history of shock cinema, and that's fine. But I also feel like it's sort of limited in terms of narrative, and the creative satisfaction of just shocking people is pretty is pretty minimal for me.
Yeah.
I know films are graphic, but uh, to me, those graphic elements are very narrative. For instance, in Infinity Pool, so much of the story is about the psychological evolution of the character, where the character goes to based on his experiences and the other characters' experiences. And so, to me, it's important that the audience understands that on a visceral level. You
Mhm.
experience it. It's a very subjective film. You're seeing it sort of through that character's eyes, and so to experience those things in a really visceral way, to have that kind of sense of it, I think calibrates the audience so that they're experiencing the next part of the film in a way that I think is important.
Yeah, no, I think you definitely nailed that. The drama behind it definitely sort of elevates everything else. But like you said, like there are some, visceral and very shocking moments in the film. How do you go about articulating the ideas that are in your head and perhaps on paper to the people that have to make it practical?
Well, I'm very fortunate to work with very experienced genre nerds who all love this stuff and do this stuff for a living. So it's less of a struggle to articulate and more something that becomes very quickly a brainstorming session, because I'm working with like my effects artist Dan Martin, or Kareem Hussein, my cinematographer, Rob Cotterill, who's a my first AD, but also one of my close filmmaking collaborators. They're all massive horror fans and love this stuff. And so, I'll have my initial ideas, but very quickly Dan will say, okay, well, look, you want to have this like hallucinatory orgy. I've got some stuff that I've been working on. Some strange dicks in my closet that I want to like involve in this, and you know, um, here's a sort of a menu of things based on our brainstorming sessions that are kind of achievable, like within the budget and time frame, and we can talk that through. And so it becomes very quickly this great collaborative process with those guys.
It's good to have friends like that. No, nothing like having a mate with dicks in his closet.
Yeah, I mean, Dan has tons of dicks apparently in there, but yet he still has to make custom dicks for every film. So the dick closet only expands.
I don't recall seeing actors commit quite as much mental and physical investment into a movie, because Alexander Skarsgård and Mia Goth are both just intense in this film. Are they easy to direct, and do you let them have much flexibility with the script?
Yes, they're fantastic to direct, and I give them quite a bit of room to explore. You know, by the time I'm casting a film, I'm sort of bored of my characters because I've been working on the script for years. The characters have all kind of gone to sleep on me, and so really, what I want to do is find those actors who have, you know, that special thing that some actors have, where they just like burn through the screen every time you see them. They're just so immediately fascinating. And Mia is one of those performers. Alex is one of those performers. You know, I've admired their work for years, and so I want them to surprise me and to inject life into the characters, and so I like to give them a fair bit of room to explore on set. The scene still has to work in a certain way. You know, I still have to edit in my head as we're shooting and kind of guide it. But really, they bring a lot to those characters, and that's why I cast them, knowing that they can bring that intensity to the part.
Yeah, they go from sweet to sour very easily, both of them in different ways. And I don't like to use the term scream queen, but Mia Goth is like, just, she is the new scream queen. Like, she's just nailing it in really good horror movies at the moment. You know, it's a real asset to you.
Oh, completely. I mean, you know, again, Mia is someone I've been wanting to work with for years. It's sort of a kind of a lucky coincidence in a way that she's hit this run of respected horror roles, because it's kind of fed into, I guess, the excitement around her in the film. But I mean, since Nymphomaniac and all throughout her career, she's just one of those actors who steals every scene that she's in, and you know, I think she's amazing.
Totally. They're both very audacious, but you do seem to surround yourself with risk takers, I think is probably the best way to put it. Do you have actors in mind when you're writing scripts, or is it just the usual process of, you know, finding them through audition and casting?
It's usually with leads. It's usually not audition, because you're usually lucky to get them to to say yes, or at least I am. You know, maybe it's different if you're Marvel or whatever, but for me, I don't write with an actor in mind, because the stars really have to align anytime you cast anybody. You know, you know, are they available? Do they want to do it? You know, in an indie co-production, it can be as weird as, do they have the right passport, you know, to be allowed to be in the film? And so all these elements can block you from casting an actor. And so to avoid heartbreak, I don't have anyone in mind as I'm writing the roles. I sort of again, I just have certain actors that I like, and then if I'm lucky enough to get them interested in the film, then they become the character.
Well, you've lucked out every time, all three films.
Well,
How many movies and sort of stories do you sort of have floating around your head at any given time? Like, do you have a backlog of movies you'd like to make?
Absolutely. It sort of depends. I mean, when I made my first film, I didn't have another project going because I didn't have a career yet, and so I sort of had vague ideas, but I'd focused all my attention on just trying to get that one thing made. Mm-hmm. Then there was an 8-year gap between my first and second films, where I accumulated many projects that I was sort of desperately trying to get made, and now hopefully some of those are going to be able to go ahead. But
do you have much input or say on how the final sort of poster treatment looks? Because they've all been really striking.
Generally, it varies. I mean, you get input, but also not approval usually from your distributors. I mean, I have a very good relationship with Neon, who were responsible for the last 2 posters. Or not in every territory, but for the US. And so yes, it's a collaborative process with those guys. But I
Yeah,
mean, they're also just fantastic at positioning films, and you know, it's
yeah, and they obviously they respect your vision because they definitely nail it on the poster. Um, what sort of movies in general influence you? Like, do you generally watch these type of films, or are you into other kind of films just as a casual observer?
yeah, I watch kind of everything. You know, I mean, uh, I wasn't a cinephile getting into films necessarily in the way that some people are. Like a lot of the people who I work with are very, very obsessive cinephiles. I sort of grew up being, you know, appreciating movies, but reading books more, being a bit more of a book nerd. Um, and but so I watch everything. I mean, I love horror and I love genre films, but you know, I'll watch anything.
Yeah, you're comfortably carving out a notch in horror and sci-fi. So, but do you ever see yourself stepping to the side and doing another kind of movie?
For sure. You know, I'm not specifically trying to be a horror filmmaker, although I'm happy to be a horror filmmaker. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
that, not that I have a problem being. I am a horror filmmaker in that that's what I've been making. But uh, you know, it's just sort of where my head's at. I wouldn't hesitate to follow some other idea if
Just go where the instinct is. Awesome. Well, I've clocked up the time efficiently and out of questions, but no, just as a fanboy, yeah, I love your work. I'm particularly big on Canadian cinema, having lived there for a while.
Oh, really? Where were
So
you? Where were you in Canada?
I was in Vancouver, and I went briefly to the Vancouver Film School, and so that mid to late '90s era Canadian cinema, particularly like Bruce McDonald, all that kind of stuff, Lynn Stopkowicz, Kissed, all those sort of films, right up my alley.
Sweet.
Yeah, yeah. So no, I really get a kick out of talking to people like yourself. So thanks so much, mate.
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot.